Hey everybody, this is Dina Kennedy and this is your video Q&A. I had a really good question come in this week. The premise is you've got a non-supportive spouse or someone you live with. So the idea is if you have a home-based business and you've got somebody living in the house who's not supportive, how do you clear that negative energy? Which is really a phenomenal question because that's a tough way to be living. So I'm going to take you in a couple of different directions with this, but first of all, let's talk about you. This is very stressful, and that stress is going to be, hitting you on a lot of different levels: mind, body, spirit, and emotions. And so what stress does when it comes into the body is it starts to tangle our energy and get packed in, and it gets packed very tight. And what you want to do is unpack it and let it move out. Okay, so if you can come with me on that visual, stress comes in, we squeeze, we hold, more stress comes in, we squeeze, we hold, more stress comes in, we squeeze, we hold, we get tighter and tighter and tighter, and now we're not breathing, now we're ready to snap, now we're ready to blow. Number one thing you want to do when you're living with a lot of stress is figure out your best tool for releasing stress on a daily basis. For me, it's self-Reiki. It's getting up early in the morning before anyone else is awake and doing a little yoga or some stretching or having a coffee and sitting in silence before anybody else in the house wakes up. And my intention with that is to be releasing whatever came in the day before or whatever came in that day or whatever came in during the night with my time for myself. So it's really an act of self-care. One thing that happens, which is a little bit challenging with stress, is as we get very tight like that, we start to hold and try to block the energy from the other person, and we're trying to block it from hitting us. The problem with that, and you'll hear people say, put a bubble of light around you, things like that, stand in the light, put a bubble of pink. The problem with that and the problem with trying to block it is that when you are saying, I need to block this, it means it's already hit you. And so what that means is it came in, and now you're throwing up a block, and what happens is that energy is already in you, and it starts to bounce between you and that block. And that just makes it worse and worse. Not only does it bounce in you, it also attracts more of it towards you because you're really energizing this thing that's bouncing. It's a terrible sensation. And it's what we do as humans. We will block and hold. What we have to learn to do is open and release. So when someone throws something at you, you want to imagine you're somebody like SpongeBob SquarePants and that you just squeeze it out the back. Squeeze it out the back, let it go, let it come in, let it go out the other side. One way that I do this when I'm dealing with someone difficult or challenging is as I'm listening to them, I'm also checking my breath. I'm making sure I'm actually breathing while they're talking, because 9 times out of 10, we're not breathing. We're going to freeze. And again, that's going to lock that energy. So you just want to start to breathe when they talk and when they're carrying on and when they're not being supportive. Just check and make sure you're actually breathing. Wiggle your toes, drop that energy down. Okay, so that's part one, is you really need to up your self-care, your self-awareness, your breathing, and find some way to release stress on a daily basis if you're going to continue to live with a person like that. Of course, the other thing you want to do then, and take this in a different tangent, is what's the problem? Like, what is it about you in your business that's stressing this person out and causing them to be negative? Is it that they're afraid they're never going to see you because you're going to be consumed by this? Are they jealous of the business? Are they afraid they're going to have to take care of the kids? What's their issue around this? And what could you do to mitigate that issue? So, for instance, for a lot of people who start up their businesses, they put in hours and hours and hours, a gajillion hours, and the spouse or significant other starts to go, hey, wait a minute, that business is taking you away from my time. Answer to that one, it's really kind of easy. You set office hours and you keep them. You only run your business within your set office hours, and you tell your spouse and significant other, honey, these are my office hours. If you will let me run my business during this time, I'm all yours the rest of the time. So that's a really useful way and a helpful way. if you're following the energy, usually someone is really negative because either they're afraid you're going to succeed and move away from them, or they may just be afraid they're going to lose you, or like I said, they're afraid that they're going to lose your time together and your connection. So think about what could be making that tick underneath. The person may not even be aware of it on the surface. And see if you can schedule or find a way around that. Again, often it's the scheduling thing, or the person's afraid they're going to have to do more child care, which we shouldn't even call it child care because it's caring for your own children. However, you may need a sitter. You want to just compromise is not quite the right word. You want to see where you can give, where you can soften this resistance, where you can soften the energy, soften the edges of it. I bet you can find at least a couple of ways to do that. And the more you take care of yourself, the easier it will be to find ways to soften and mitigate the concerns of anyone else who lives in the house with you. So again, that's a great question. It's a tough question. It requires a lot of self-monitoring. What am I doing? Am I breathing? Am I caring for myself? Put it on the calendar. Make sure, am I having a walk? If you've got office hours, just make a sign. These are my hours. Tell everybody, this is when mommy's working, or this is when I'm working, honey. And when I'm done with these hours, you then need to close the computer, be done, and be off and doing the rest of your life. I hope that was helpful. I'm Dina Kennedy. If you're interested in learning more about me, or perhaps doing some coaching work with me, or some angel card readings, you can find me at dinakennedy.com. You can find me on Facebook, Dina Kennedy Reiki, and you can find me here on YouTube on the Dina Kennedy channel. See you next time.